Yo, what is up, everyone? My name is JGR from NASCAR on MDK. Welcome back to the episode of Inside Lines. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We have 5 or 7 quick stories and then 2 big ones. Obviously, one of them is regarding the NextGen car, which is probably something that most of you are going to be wondering about my thoughts and what we know so far. So I'm going to have a little time interval down in the description down below, or actually a little ticker down below that tells you, hey, if you don't care about all these other stories, you can just skip to the part where I talk about the NextGen car, because I know that is a hot topic for all NASCAR fans. But first, let's get right into it. The news you need to know. We have 7 quick little stories of basically stories that you might need to know or stuff worth knowing. They're not big stories, just little quick little snippets of stories that don't really mean much, but just something that you need to know. So, first story comes from Matt Tifft, the former driver of Front Row Motorsports in the 36 car. He was just recently married, officially married on Saturday to his longtime girlfriend, Jordan Holt. Congratulations to them. Obviously, I said former. After Matt Tifft, he had a seizure during Martinsville weekend in the fall. There were speculations of even if Matt Tifft was healthy enough to participate for 2020. The two sides, both Matt Tifft and Front Row, confirmed or agreed to part ways. So yeah, congratulations to Matt Tifft on getting married, but he still has no job, at least to my knowledge, of landing a ride in NASCAR in 2020. And we now transition to our next story. Huge congratulations to the Dillon family. Austin Dillon and Whitney Dillon announced on Instagram Monday morning that they're going to be expecting their very first child, so congratulations to them. Richard Petty Motorsports might be getting a new upgrade for 2020 season. Brian Moffitt, the chief executive officer of Richard Petty Motorsports, he announced that the team are planning to have some new sponsors coming into the sport sometime around in January, and with the additional funding, the teams are scheduled to have new cars added to their race shop for Bubba Wallace around the early part of the 2020 season. Now they're expecting to have up to a dozen new cars, like I said, near the first quarter of the season. But on one side this is great, but on the other side this is weird, hensing the fact that 2021 next gen we have a brand new car coming out. So in my opinion, it makes sense to at least like get all these sponsors, but hold off until 2021. But at the same time, you know, you want to get at least something, so I can't blame them for jumping on board with this right away. So yeah, hopefully we see some of basically, if they're saying it's true, hopefully we see RPM get some form of show some form of performance. They really had only one good run to my knowledge, and that was Indianapolis, where I think Bubba Wallace finished 3rd or 4th. So yeah, it will be nice to see that 43 car up in front a lot more in 2020. Hopefully, we could see that happen. Well, today, or at least a few days ago, it was announced that Joe Gibbs will be named to NFL 100's all-time team. NFL having their 100th season, they're picking all 100 players or coaches or whatever as the all-time team, or at least the greatest team in the NFL. And Joe Gibbs is, I believe, only one of 10 coaches that are on the 100 team list. Joe Gibbs, obviously known as a former Washington Redskins head coach, claiming a 154 to a 94 win-loss record as a franchise's winningest coach over his 16 seasons. Not only that, but he led the Redskins to all 3 of the team's Super Bowls and was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1996. I mean, Joe Gibbs, he's just been on fire for the past few years. First, he wins the championship, breaks the record for most wins by a team in a single season, formally congratulates the champion Kyle Busch in Nashville, and now he gets put in the NFL's top 100 or all-time team, whatever it's called. So yeah, huge congratulations to Joe Gibbs. Yeah, that nothing can stop this guy at this point. Now, last year, Ross Chastain ran 77 races in 2019 across all 3 series. It looks like he might be trying to go for that number even more. He announced that he is planning on running all 3 series. Obviously, the Xfinity Series will be his full-time ride, while Trucks and Cup will be part-time. But yeah, I mean, this guy's an absolute maniac. I mean, you run all these races. Now, the reason why he's doing all this stuff is to get as much seat time, I believe, as possible, in order to get as many opportunities as possible in order to race for other teams and other series. So, hey, congratulations to Chastain, who finished 2nd in the Truck Series points last season. A nearly underdog story to not even run the full season with a really an underfooted team like Nice Motorsports and Tuneo go out there and win the championship. Congratulations to him. And yeah, I expect nothing more but success for Ross Chastain when he goes to Kaulig Racing in 2020. Now, Ty Majeski, maybe you know him for running a select number of races around 15, 16, 17, I want to say. Maybe even 18. No, 15, 16, and 17, I believe. Him and Austin Cindric ran a number of races with the number 60 car for Roush Fenway Racing. We all know how atrocious that was. I mean, every week they just be either in a wreck or in the garage or have some sort of problem. So yeah, great. Congratulations to him on getting the ride. And this is sort of a something he needed this moment, mainly because of what took place during the Snowball Derby over the weekend, where he crashed, or he didn't crash, he got taken out off of turn 4 and caused a huge pileup on the front straightaway. So yeah, even though he might not have won the Snowball Derby, at least he gets to compete for a championship next year in the Truck Series. And now this final quick story revolves around Hailie Deegan. Now, many of us came under the conclusion that, okay, she's going to be part of the Toyota fleet. She's going to go through KBM and trucks, go through Joe Gibbs, and most likely going to be a Joe Gibbs driver if everything goes right with the world. But now Adam Stern reported that there's a possibility that Hailie Deegan could go to JGR Crossley Racing. Now, while that not be a surprise, what is a surprise is the fact that maybe, quite possibility, that team might switch from Toyota to Ford next season in 2020. Now, personally, I think if Deegan goes to a Ford, I'm personally okay with that. It's not because I don't like Toyota, but I feel like while even Toyota, they have the best car, they have little to no space. I mean, look how long it took Christopher Bell to get a Cup ride. I mean, he had to stay in Xfinity for an extra 1 or 2 years. And look how great of a season he had in that time in Xfinity. We don't know how good Hailie Deegan is going to be. So there's a possibility that if she stays with Toyota, she could have her career slowed down longer than it needs to be. With Ford has a lot of teams in its stable, both in trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Same with Chevrolet. They have a lot of teams in those 3 divisions. Toyota, they have little to none. I mean, in trucks, well, let's say if DGR does go to Ford, I believe KBM is really the only powerhouse team in the Truck Series to run Toyota. In Xfinity, I believe also Joe Gibbs, the only powerhouse team that runs Toyotas. And Cup, it was Furniture Row, but they shut down, so now it's just Joe Gibbs. So Toyota, they have the best cars, but very limited space. Ford and Chevy, while they might not be the best cars in Cup, they are running really good in the trucks in Xfinity. You get a lot of options and more opportunities. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how Hailie Deegan makes her decision. She has been a Toyota affiliated driver throughout her entire career on pavement. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she sticks with Toyota or makes a jump to the Ford camp. And now to our 2 big stories of this episode. The first one comes from JGR. We have another retirement from the 19 camp, and this one is pretty much of a huge shock. Not as shocking as Carl Edwards, at least in my opinion, but still a pretty big shock. JGR announced that Cole Pearn, the crew chief of the number 19 team, will retire from NASCAR, will leave Joe Gibbs Racing in order to pursue other opportunities outside the sport. He said in a heartfelt statement, quote, "This was an incredibly difficult decision. At the end of the day, I really want to spend time with my family and actually see my kids grow up. Being on the road, you are away from home so much and miss a lot of the time with your family. I don't want to miss that time anymore. I want to be there for all the things that my kids are going to experience while they are still young. I love racing. There isn't a better place to be than Joe Gibbs Racing, but I don't want to look back in 20 years and think about everything I missed with my wife and kids while I was gone. They are what is most important to me." Now, Joe Gibbs has, at the time of this recording, they have not announced a replacement yet for Cole Pearn, but they will so sometime in the future. And while I want to say I'm shocked, but at the same time, I'm kind of not, because it felt like for some reason to me, I did not believe that Cole Pearn would stay at Joe Gibbs for a long time. I just didn't see it. Him living in Canada, I mean, his wife, his kids are all in Canada. Denver was the closest place to Canada. The flight time between Denver and Canada is around 1.5 to maybe 2.5 hours. From North Carolina to Canada, however, is around 4.5 hours. That's a long time. You can't just make these trips back and forth all the time. Puts a lot of stress on a person's head, person's life. They're spending so much time away from their family, and it really puts everything in perspective. Why I think NASCAR desperately needs to shorten the schedule. We have seen so many times again when drivers retire, the number one thing: spending so much time away from home. It's not rarely not Jeff Gordon. Dale Jr. was an exception. It was mainly due to concussions. But I believe with Jimmy Johnson, with Jeff Gordon, and now with Cole Pearn, Carl Edwards, they're spending so much time away from home that they want to be there for the kids. They want to be there for their family. And I think it's really, we need to start considering NASCAR shortening the schedule tremendously. I'm not talking about maybe 1 or 2 races. I'm talking about maybe shortening the schedule from mid-November to around mid-September. I mean, I think right before the NFL season starts will be the perfect schedule. That's just my opinion, because if you shorten the schedule, that means you give more time to drivers, crew chiefs, crew members, whatever, time at home to spend time with their family, so that by the time they leave, they don't feel so much that they've missed everything out. But that's just my opinion. Good luck to whatever Cole Pearn does in his future endeavors. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Mark Truex Jr., that 19 team, does without Cole Pearn. I mean, Cole Pearn, they have had a fantastic record, or at least Cole Pearn has had a fantastic record throughout his only 4 or 5 years in NASCAR as a crew chief. It's pretty incredible. Throughout his 5, I mean, take a look at his stats. Throughout his 5 years in NASCAR and 179 races, already nearly a quarter of 100 wins, 24 to be exact, 70 top 5s, 110 top 10s, and of course that 2017 championship he won with Mark Truex Jr. at Furniture Row Racing. And absolutely outstanding career in such a short amount of time. It's sad to see Cole Pearn go, but like I said earlier, hopefully he finds some joy or anything good outside of the sport. And now on to the story that everyone wants to talk about, the NextGen car. NASCAR throughout a 2-day weekend or 2-day test yesterday, Monday, and Tuesday, earlier today at the time of this recording, ran a test at the Phoenix International Raceway, or ISM Raceway, with Joey Logano as the driver. Now this is again similar to what we saw at Richmond with Austin Dillon. It's just a generic version of the NextGen car built by Richard Childress Racing. Now, unlike the test at Richmond, at Phoenix we see a lot more pictures. Now, for the first time, we hear sound from the NextGen car, and we just get a clearer perspective of what NASCAR is testing out with the NextGen car. In a statement with the Auto Week article, Joey Logano as well as others commented on the NextGen car. Logano says, quote, "It's not about what drives the best, what's the easiest to drive. We don't want that," Logano said. "We want something that's challenging, that will show that the best driver and the best team will prevail. So we're trying on different extremes. A lot of downforce, and then little downforce, and then figure out what's going to make the best racing." And that's interesting because when on the first day of the test on Monday, there was a giant ass spoiler, as a lot of people like to call it now, thank you Dale Jr. It was criticized a lot because the fans didn't want that. Well, today they ran a tiny ass spoiler, very small. It could be a wicker before, if it was that tiny of a spoiler. Let's take a look at this photo from Joe Logano's Facebook page. I mean, it was very small, so they are trying out everything. Just trying to make sure that they can put out the best racing as they can. But again, you can only do so much with one car on the racetrack. I think it'd be a lot better if you're going to test all this stuff, get 2 or 3 cars in the mix and try it out. You can't really do much with one car. One car, it might tell you one thing, but when you put it against another car, or when you put it in race mode, it could be a completely different thing. Now we're going to play a 3-minute clip of Joey Logano talking about all of the features, basically giving us a tour of the NextGen car. Take a look.
Hey guys, it's Joey Logano. Sorry I have a cold and lost my voice. But we're out here in Phoenix, and look what we're testing, the NextGen car. I wanted to take you guys around, show it to you a little bit. Probably the first thing you notice is these really cool wheels. A little bigger wheel, wider tire as well to give a little bit more mechanical grip. I think that's awesome. Got some interesting exhaust look going on to try to take some of the air out from underneath the car. Now the body is generic. There's no OEM tied to this yet. They're still designing the car as they're rolling it away from me. You see the diffuser in the back. All this is just trying to create downforce underneath the car, which would essentially hopefully put more air on the trailing car, create more capacity. Look at this little guy. They call that a spoiler. I think it's just a wicker, but it looks good to me. That makes the car really fun to drive because there's not much downforce, and so we're just kind of trying different things. Tried big spoilers, little spoilers, different splitters, different underbody stuff. I'll take your hand over here. Big brakes on these things. The thing stops incredible. Definitely drives a lot different than what our cars do right now. So we're all just trying to figure out what works on the car, what we need to keep fixing. We got a lot of people here working on this thing today, from transmissions to steering racks to wheels, brakes. We got everybody here that's working on this thing, trying to figure out what they're doing. Here, I'll show you inside the car. So inside the car still looks like a stock car, which I think there's a lot of stuff's gonna be designed. All that stuff's for the data on the car that won't be there when we race. So not a whole bunch different inside. The seating position is different. I get to sit a little lower, which is good for a tall guy like me. And then underneath the hood, there's still a lot of things that are going to be changed. But you see a lot of the exhaust from the radiator comes up through the hood. Seeing that some of the intake is going to come through the front grille. Trying to come up with the best plan there to where we don't have to run the engine so hot, be able to run the engines longer. And things like that would be big. Trying to keep the splitter up. Once again, trying to keep air underneath the car, feed more air to the trailing car. So a lot of really cool things that's going to make this thing race really well. It's going to be a little bit more affordable for the race teams. And I think it's going to be very exciting for the fans because this thing's durable. It's going to be a pretty tough car. So I think that's great. So you can be able to bounce off the wall like the Xfinity cars do right now and not knock fenders in, not cut tires down. That stuff's important, I think, to a good race. So I'm excited. It's been a lot of fun to drive it. I'm honored to drive this thing. I'm kind of think it's really cool that they chose me. They could have chose anyone, so it's kind of cool that they trust me enough to drive this thing. And we've had a lot of fun. So got a little bit more work to do today on it. And just like I said, trying to get directions on the balance of the car from different aero packages, different tires, and then eventually, if we get another one of these things built, we could go out there and run some cars side by side and behind each other and try to develop it more.
Now, another statement from the Auto Week article. Logano mentioned how difficult it was to drive the car at Phoenix. And this just, like I said, it's just a generic version of the car. He talked about how hard it was to actually drive the racetrack. He said, quote, "When the car gets loose with this next-gen car, it doesn't come back until the driver steers the car back. It doesn't fix itself. And that puts it more in the driver's hands." And I like that piece, Logano said. "It's going to be challenging, but I think you'll see more mistakes on the racetrack, which makes, in my opinion, better racing and more passing opportunities. The tire is completely different, and the body isn't close to the same, so your natural reactions are wrong, and you have to be able to adapt quickly when you feel something instead of trying to let the car fix itself." And I sort of like what NASCAR is doing. They're starting from from the smallest of tracks. Well, Richmond's not that small, but whatever. From the shortest of tracks to the biggest of tracks. So we went from 3/4 of a mile to then a mile track at ISM, and we now go to those 1.5-mile track, which will be Homestead. The next test will be for the next gen car, and I feel like that is going to be the most important one because 1.5 dominate the NASCAR schedule, and if you get the 1.5 tracks right, then that's already a huge step in the right direction. So that's going to be a track that many people are going to be focusing on to make sure that they can get this right. And John Prost, the NASCAR Senior Vice President of Racing Innovation, he talked about going to Homestead and what it can do for the next gen car. He said, quote, "Phoenix is a local progression from Richmond," Prob said. "A lot of the testing we needed to do before we head to a track like Homestead, which is where we're headed next, wasn't completed at Richmond. For us, it was a really good progression from Richmond, load speeds, and now we're creeping the speeds up to start really testing out a lot of the mechanical parts and pieces on the car." And now we went going away from the quotes, and now let's take a look at the actual stuff that we see from the next gen car, from videos and pictures. Now we're gonna play this 5 and 10-second clip from both tests, and just to give you an idea of what the car looks like as well as how it sounds. Now straight away, huge difference I see, ground clearance. Now, yes, there is still a splitter. I don't think we're going away from the splitter. I would like to get rid of the splitter, but I don't think NASCAR will. So the X3 car will do. You see ground clearance. That means clean air is able to get underneath the car, which means cleaning air for the car behind. That's good. Another change that I noticed or heard was the engine. It sounded more throaty. It sounded more like a street car. And I don't know if this has to do with the hood ducts or something with the engine compartment on the hood of the car. There's like two massive tubes connected to the engine. I believe that has something to do with the change. I'm not sure. Maybe it has to do with the exhaust pipes, because now instead of having an exhaust on one side of the car, it's now on both sides. Usually the exhaust takes place, I believe, on the right side of the car to get so that it's not hot underneath a driver's butt. Now it's located on both sides of the car, which We saw that little snippet near the end of Logano heading to turn 3 or turn 4. Saw the engine or the fire come out of both sides of the exhaust pipe. And of course, we noticed a smaller spoiler, but we talked about this earlier. NASCAR, they're just experimenting what it's like with a big spoiler, what's it like with a small spoiler. Now, I noticed at the back end of the car, it looks more pushed in. Like it just gives me that street car feel. I mean, take a look next to a Mustang or a Camaro, then take a look at the next gen car. It doesn't, you really have to think about it, but it reminds me a lot of the back end reminds me a lot of the cars from the road, which again, this is the whole point of the next gen car, for to do two things: to make it cost effective and to make it look like the cars on the road. I like what I see. So far, I like what I see, but I'm holding all of my thoughts until I see it racing against other cars. Because like I said earlier, this is basically qualifying. What a car runs during qualifying or a car runs by itself is completely different to how a car runs with other race cars. So I'm holding my thoughts until, you know, maybe February or March, when the NASCAR season really starts, where we're starting to see maybe more things with the next gen car, and we might start to see some actual racing with the next gen car along with other cars. But yeah, I mean, so far I like it, but again, holding a lot of my thoughts until we see more of the next gen car in the future. And yeah, that's gonna conclude this episode of Inside Line. Tell me what do you guys thought out of any of the stories. What are you guys thoughts on Cole Pearn leaving NASCAR? Do you think it's gonna affect the 19 team? And what are your thoughts on the next gen car? What do you like about it so far? What don't you like about it? I feel like a lot of people are gonna say they don't like the splitter. They want a valence. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think the X3 splitter will do. If we don't have a valence, I'm okay with the X3 splitter. But yeah, I'm still skeptical, but for now, I like what I see for NASCAR's future in 2021. But like I said, that's going to conclude this episode. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. But until next time, my name is JGR from NASCAR on MDK, and I'll see you guys in the next video.